Jewish Channel's Week in Review. The Syria deal and its impact on Israel, Broadway's portrayal of a singing rabbi, a new look at Marc Chagall, and more of the Jewish news that's changing your world right now in this episode of the Week in Review. Hello and welcome to the Jewish Channel's Week in Review. I'm Stephen I. Weiss. The controversy over Syria's chemical weapons program seems headed in a direction almost no one predicted just a week or two ago, but the civil war itself is continuing with essentially no pause or diminution in violence. Joining the chorus of those calling for the United States and Russia to broker a deal to safely remove, confiscate, or destroy any chemical weapons caches belonging to the government of Syria's Bashar Assad was apparently the Israeli government. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reportedly urged Secretary of State John Kerry to pursue the deal. But the larger humanitarian crisis created by Syria's conflict is sure only to grow much larger, as the international community seems to have developed a consensus against intervention regarding Assad's use of conventional weaponry. And while Jewish groups have been outspoken in their advocacy for removing Syria's chemical weapons capability, the JTA reports that Jewish organizations have not done much to deal with the situation of Syrian refugees. According to the JTA, only 3 organizations have prominent appeals to raise funds to assist refugees on their websites, and only one, the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee, or JDC, has contributed from its own funds. The JDC contributed $50,000. It is estimated that more than 2 million Syrian refugees have fled the country amidst the ongoing warfare, and it is widely reported that the vast bulk of these refugees are living in dire conditions. And while questions remain as to exactly how far Israel might get dragged into the conflict, the first prominent example of a business loss for the Jewish state as a result of the Syrian civil war was revealed over the weekend. The television series Homeland is switching the location for a number of its shoots from Israel to Morocco, amid concerns over the situation in Syria and possible spillover effects. Ironically, the series not only includes a number of plot twists related to Israel, but is itself actually the result of Israeli television production, as Homeland is the Americanized English-language version of an Israeli television series. But when it comes to visits from American TV producers to international locations, Israel is probably likely to profit far more from the recent visit of celebrity chef and TV host Anthony Bourdain. Bourdain's CNN series Parts Unknown debuted its latest season with an episode focused on Israel and the Palestinian territories. Viewers were treated to shots of Bourdain donning tefillin at the Western Wall, inquiring into the eternal debate over the ethnic origins of falafel, and also touring areas of conflict and concern in Israel proper and Palestine. Amidst all the debate over the politics and history of the area, Bourdain concluded,
"Whatever you may think and whatever baggage you may bring to this place, you should see this."
Moving on to other things you should see, the artwork of Marc Chagall is well known to many in the Jewish community, but the Jewish Museum in New York is adding a twist with an exhibit focused on his works produced in America, as Christian Needham reports.
A tumultuous period in the long life and prolific artistry of Marc Chagall is receiving a closer look this fall and winter at the Jewish Museum in New York. Chagall, Love, War, and Exile is on display now through February 2nd and focuses on his work from the 1930s to 1948. It was a period when the middle-aged Chagall went from living in Paris to being exiled to America in the face of rising fascism and the Second World War. In addition to the painted portrayals of himself that Chagall included in his works, the Jewish Museum's exhibition also features an important photograph of the artist's true face. In spring of 1942, the 54-year-old Chagall lent his 1939 painting, The Dream, to the Artists in Exile show at the Pierre Matisse Gallery in New York. It features the works of 14 émigré artists, including heavyweights Max Ernst and Fernand Léger, who flank Chagall in the group photograph, as well as André Masson, Jacques Lipchitz, and Pete Mondrian. Chagall would go on to achieve greater popularity, in part because, upon his death at age 97 in 1985, he had outlived and outproduced most of his contemporaries. Chagall's Jewish identity, which would have cost him his long life had he stayed in occupied France, is very apparent in several recurring details in the 31 paintings and 22 drawings on display in this show. Among them are symbols of both Jewish faith and persecution. There are also repeated portrayals of a crucified Jesus, serving as a metaphor for the World War that claimed the lives of so many of Chagall's fellow Jews. One of the largest visual expressions of Chagall's take on the human tragedy of the love, war, and exile years is The Fall of the Angel, which he began in 1923 and completed in 1947. Throughout the 1930s, Chagall also worked on the surreal imagery of time as a river without banks. Those poetic words are complemented with several other literary verses that adorn the spaces above Chagall's visual poetry, a reminder to visitors that the artist could express as much with a written word as with a brushstroke. To see more from Chagall, Love, War, and Exile at the Jewish Museum in New York, now through February 2nd, please tune into the full broadcast edition of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Christian. Finally, Soul Doctor is a musical Meredith Gansman has followed from early rehearsals to a regional tour and now to its latest stop on Broadway. Here is her report.
The Soul Doctor is in. Eric Anderson, star of the new Broadway musical Soul Doctor, sat down especially with TJC in the synagogue where it all began. If these walls could talk, or rather sing, they'd sound like this. That's Eric Anderson, and a former company of Soul Doctor, the musical about famed rabbi and musician Shlomo Carlebach, rehearsing at the Westside Jewish Center almost 2 years ago.
My final callback was right here. I remember singing Let It Be. They had me kind of do a and then I sang Let It Be. It was very sweet.
Now those soulful sounds have a much larger stage, Broadway.
Raise your voice up and prepare to mend the broken heart.
The new musical Soul Doctor is about rock and roll rabbi Shlomo Carlebach, who many consider to be one of the most important Jewish songwriters of the last century.
The music is magical. Mm-hmm. It's as his daughter Nisham would say, he literally picked the songs out of the air, and he's written thousands of them, many of which weren't recorded because, you know, he would make it up on the spot during Shabbos.
Anderson, who's not Jewish, was unfamiliar with Carlebach before he was cast to play him.
I wish I'd met him. It would have helped a little bit.
Carlebach died in 1994, but for Anderson, he lives as a symbol of the good one person can do.
He was so focused on lifting people up and treating each other as equals, as brothers and sisters, being a beautiful bard of universal love. Mm-hmm. It really became clear that this is really what we need in this day and age right now.
But there wasn't always love for Carlebach. Raised as an Orthodox Jew, he was criticized by other Orthodox rabbis for the way he reached out to his non-Orthodox followers. And after his death, women came forward to Lilith magazine accusing the charismatic rabbi of sexual harassment and assault. And then there was his relationship as a young man with African-American jazz artist Nina Simone, played by Amber Iman.
He and Nina had a very beautiful, soulful relationship with one another, and were really contemporaries at the same time, and I really think that piano scene at the top of Act 1 is really the heart of our show, because it really shows how different people can come together and have such rooted similarities as human beings.
To see more from Eric Anderson, now starring as Shlomo Carlebach in Soul Doctor, tune into the full broadcast version of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Meredith. That's all for this week. From all of us here at the Jewish Channel, be well. Jewish Channel is available on cable. Time Warner Cable Channel 528, IO Optimum Channel 505, RCN Channel 268, Bright House Channel 330, Verizon Fios Channel 900, Cox Cable Channel 1, Frontier Communications, and on Comcast in the on-demand menu under Premium Channels. For more information, visit tjctv.com.